Chapter 17. I landed on the perch outside Rachel's window. It was night, but she wasn't asleep. She was reading a book in bed, propped up by several pillows. I fluttered a wing against the glass. "Rachel?" She started. The books went flying. She jumped up and ran to the window, throwing it open. "Tobias?" "More or less," I said wryly. She started to hug me, to put her arms around me, but then she realized that wasn't possible. Birds aren't exactly made for hugging. "Are you okay? We've all been terrified. Cassie said maybe you were killed or something. There are all kinds of things that can happen. Jake is so depressed." "I'm okay," I said. I flapped over to her dresser. Now that she was sure I was safe, she was starting to get mad. It made me smile inwardly. This was Rachel for you. "Tobias, what is the deal with you? Why would you just disappear and leave us all worrying for days?" "It's hard to explain," I said. I guess the hawk sort of won out over me. Not that it's really that way. I mean, the hawk instincts, they're strong. I told her about my first kill, about how much it horrified me. I don't know how I expected her to react. She tried to look sympathetic, but I could see that it bothered her. "I lost control," I admitted. "For the last couple of days, I've been living like a hawk. All the way, like a hawk. I think I was starting to forget me. I was starting to lose touch with humans. But then something happened." "What?" She went to check her door and make sure neither of her sisters were nearby. I could hear that the house was quiet. "What happened?" I told her about going to the lake. I told her about the guy being chased by Hork-Bajir. Fortunately, I could see the terrain better than the Hork-Bajir or those human controller park rangers. I led him away from them. I told him where to hide and where to run. "You talked to him?" I thought spoke, yes. There was no alternative. I couldn't let them catch him. He had seen a Hork-Bajir. They were never going to let him escape. Rachel looked stunned. "But now he knows about you. And he knows about the Hork-Bajir. What's he going to do? Go tell people he was chased through the woods by an alien monster and rescued by a telepathic bird?" Rachel laughed. "Yeah, good point. People would just think he was insane. Besides, if he started talking openly about the Yeerks, they would find him and silence him." "Exactly what I explained to him. I think he'll probably keep quiet. He'll try to forget it ever happened." "You saved him," Rachel said. "I almost didn't," I admitted. "At first I just saw another predator and his prey, no different from watching the owls at night. No different from what I do myself, kill to eat." Rachel thought about that for a moment. "The Yeerks and their slaves aren't killing to eat," she said. "They are killing to control and dominate. Killing because it's the only way you can eat, because that's the way nature designed you, that's one thing. Killing because you want power or control is evil." "I guess you're right," I said. "I hadn't thought about it that way. What you did, eating, whatever, well, that's natural for the hawk. Nothing a Hork-Bajir does is natural. They aren't even in control of their own bodies or minds. They're tools of the Yeerks, and the Yeerks only want power and domination." "I know," I said, but I wasn't totally convinced. Still, it was comforting me to be talking with Rachel. "You are human, Tobias," she told me softly. "Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Sometimes I just feel so trapped. I want to move my fingers, but I don't have any. I want to speak out loud, but I have a mouth that's only good for ripping and tearing." Rachel looked like she might start crying. It was alarming to me, because Rachel isn't a girl who bursts out into tears, ever. "Anyway, look, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I ruined your exhibition at the mall the other day." Rachel smiled. "What do you mean? It was perfect. I was just starting my routine, and you know how much I hate to have to do public shows like that. You put an end to the whole thing real fast." I laughed silently. I can imagine. I hope no one was hurt by the falling glass. "No, everyone was fine. But what were you going to do if Marco had missed with that baseball? You would have hit the glass awfully hard." I didn't know what to say. Rachel came closer and stroked my chest with her hand. It made the hawk in me uncomfortable, but at the same time, it was similar to preening, which is kind of pleasurable. "What I told you the other day, Tobias, remember? You're not lost as long as you have Jake and Cassie and me. Even Marco. He came through for you big time. We're your friends. You're not alone. I think I would have cried then. The hawks can't cry. And someday the Andalites will come. Someday, I said, trying to sound confident. Well, I better go see Jake. The mission is supposed to begin tomorrow. We don't have to go through with that, Rachel said. Yes, we do, I said. More than ever, I understand that. See, there are human beings all over, trapped in bodies controlled by Yeerks. Trapped. Unable to escape. Rachel, I know how they feel. Maybe I can't escape. Maybe I am trapped forever. But if we can free some of those others, maybe, I don't know, maybe that's what I need to do to stay human. Chapter 18. The next day we went ahead with the mission. I flew cover overhead while 4 gray wolves ran beneath me. We timed it so we would arrive in the area very early in the morning, many hours before the Yeerks would arrive to hunt intruders. So let me get this straight, Tobias, Marco said. You're taking us to a bear cave, as in big grizzly bears, and this is a good thing? Not grizzlies, Cassie interrupted. Not in this area. We'd be talking black bears. They're much smaller. Swell. I am totally reassured. Just a small bear cave. The bears are long gone, I said. There are just a few bears around, and this cave is empty. Trust me, I spied it out yesterday. I've seen raccoons and skunks running in and out of there. They wouldn't be doing that if there were bears. Excuse me, Jake, did Tobias just say skunks? I must have heard wrong, because only an idiot would think hanging out with skunks is a good idea. We're not going to hang out with skunks, Jake said patiently. The skunks don't live there, I said. They just run in there to get away from predators. I didn't have to explain anymore. I think everyone guessed how I knew that skunks ran in there to get away from predators. Look, it's close to the lake, but I don't think the Yeerks know about it, I said. Sorry, but there wasn't a convenient Marriott hotel where I could get you guys a room for the night. So that means no room service either? Marco asked. Well, okay, as long as this cave gets cable, the big game's on ESPN tonight. I was carrying a tiny nylon pouch that Rachel had put together. It was tan in color, so the casual observer wouldn't notice it and wonder why a red-tailed hawk was carrying luggage. In the sack was a small watch. It weighed almost nothing. There were also some fish hooks, fishing line, and a small lighter. Altogether, it only weighed about 2 ounces, but it did slow me down a little. We reached the cave with plenty of time to spare on the 2-hour deadline. Oh, this looks lovely, Marco said, looking at the thorns and scrub brush around the cave entrance. I haven't really been inside, I admitted. I landed outside the entrance. The opening to the cave was no more than 2 feet across and about 4 feet high. It was easy for Jake and Rachel and their wolf morphs to leap nimbly through. Unless there really was a bear inside, they would scare off whatever might be in there. Empty, Rachel reported. Nothing in here but a couple of spiders and a scared mouse. I decided to try a joke. Chase them out here. I'm hungry. Only Marco laughed. The others all acted like I said something embarrassing. Maybe I had. Let's morph back, Marco suggested. One close call with being trapped in a wolf is plenty for me. I'll go look around, I said. Sometimes I didn't like being there when they morphed. A few minutes later, they all came out. Marco was complaining, as usual. You know, we really have to figure out how to deal with the shoe situation, he muttered. Thorns and no shoes, not a good combination. The 4 of them were barefoot and dressed only in their morphing outfits. Leotards for the girls, bike shorts and tight t-shirts for Jake and Marco. We need to gather firewood, Jake said, and with his hands on his hips. It wouldn't hurt to warm that cave up a little before the Yeerks get there. Don't you love it when Jake's all masterful like that? Rachel teased. I'm just trying to get us organized, Jake said defensively. We better get starting fishing, Cassie pointed out. If we don't catch a fish, we're pretty much wasting our time. The plan was to morph into fish to enter the Yeerk ship water pipes. Of course, in order to morph into something, you have to first acquire it, which means being able to touch it. Shouldn't be any big problem, Jake said confidently. Uh-huh, Cassie said dryly. And how many times have you gone fishing? Counting this time? Once, he laughed. Cassie rolled her eyes. Typical suburban boy, she said affectionately. It isn't all that easy. Then you guys better get started, I advised. I'll go look around. Take care of yourself, Tobias, Rachel called as I took wing. I watched from high as they made one failed attempt after another to convince the fish to bite one of our hooks. It seemed ridiculous, but the entire plan was hanging on the question of whether or not we could catch a fish, and time was running out. The day wore on, still no fish. Jake was getting edgy. Rachel was downright cranky. And Marco? Forget Marco. This is ridiculous, he raged. We're 5 fairly intelligent human beings, and we can't outsmart one fish that probably has an IQ of like 4? Cassie was the only one remaining calm. Fishing is a matter of skill and luck, she said placidly. A smart fisherman learns not to become frustrated. Jake looked at the little watch we brought along. From what we know, the Yerks will start arriving in an hour to clear the area. Rachel nodded. Even if we catch a fish now, we won't have time to test the morph. Maybe we should just back off for today, I suggested. You really ought to test out that fish morph. You guys all know how much trouble a morph can be at first. Jake shook his head firmly. I don't think so, Tobias. We'd have to wait till we had another day off. Tomorrow's no good because I have stuff with my parents, and so does Marco, which means we have to wait a whole week. So we try again next weekend. What's the hurry? The hurry is that the Yerks can't keep coming to this same lake forever. Sooner or later, the level of water will start dropping from them taking so much. They must use one lake for a while and then move on to another. It could take forever for us to find where they move next. It made sense, but that didn't make me feel any better about it. This was the first water animal any of us have morphed. You don't have any idea what it's going to be like. I know, Jake snapped. Look, Tobias, I know it's not exactly ideal. Ha! Cassie yelped. She yanked at the line she was holding. I believe we may have a fishy. It took just a few seconds to haul in the fish. Trout, she said, looking it over as it flopped in the shallow water. The hook was poked through its lip. It was about 10 inches long and not very big. The 4 of them stared blankly at it. We have to become that? Marco asked. It's a fish, Cassie said. What did you expect? Marco shrugged. I don't know, something more like Jaws. This is just a fish. I mean, we could clean him and eat him with a little lemon juice, maybe some fries on the side. The others turned and gave him a dirty look. Cassie reached down into the water took hold of the squirming gray thing. She concentrated. Her eyes closed halfway. She was acquiring it. The fish DNA was being absorbed into Cassie's body. The gift of the Andalite. The curse of the Andalite. The power to morph. Chapter 19. I don't like this plan, I blurted. Jake looked up at me in surprise. Tobias, you were the one in on planning right from the start. Look, don't you guys realize how dangerous this could be? I realize, Marco said. I realize it plenty. But I thought you were the big gung-ho yurt killer. Suddenly, you're afraid? I'm not afraid for me, I said. I'll be flying around safely while the 4 of you go up into that ship. Cassie nodded. It's hard standing by while someone else is risking their life, she said. I understand how you feel. But there have been times when you were the one taking the risks. Look, we don't have time to debate this, Jake said. We have a plan we've all agreed to. Let's get on with it before the Yerks show up. Jake gets peevish when someone questions things after everything has already been decided. Usually it's Marco getting on his nerves. We'll be okay, Rachel said confidently. Rachel took the fish in her hand. The fish went limp, as usual, while the acquiring was happening. Suddenly I couldn't watch anymore. I just had a flash of memory, watching the 4 of them straining to get out of their wolf bodies. What if they were trapped in the fish morph? The idea of being trapped was still not something any of them really understood. I mean, they knew it had happened to me. But people are funny. They never think something bad will happen to them. I knew it could happen. And to be trapped as a fish? It made me sick just thinking about it. The rest of your life in the body of a fish? Being trapped in a hawk's body seemed downright pleasant by comparison. I'm going to go upstairs and see if anyone's coming, I said. I caught a small breeze and flapped hard to clear the treetops. It was tough work gaining the altitude to get a very good view of the area. It was mostly dead air all around. but I was glad for the workout. It took my mind off imagining what life would be like if my only friends in the world were trapped as fish in a mountain lake. I would have laughed if it weren't so serious. I mean, come on, how many kids have to worry about all their friends becoming fish? Life had definitely gone strange since that night when we saw the Andalite landing at the construction site. I circled higher and higher till I could see the entire lake and most of the surrounding area. No park rangers, yet. I wondered if Jake was right and maybe the Yerks would move on to another lake. Maybe they already had. Then, there, way down on the beach, way down below on the branch, the hawk, the female I had freed from captivity. She was watching me. I could see her eyes follow me across the sky. In part, I knew she was merely watching me for the simple reason that I was in her territory. Hawks are defensive about their territory. They don't want strangers coming and grabbing all the best prey. But I had the feeling that there was something more going on. She wanted me to join her. I don't know how I knew that, but I did. She wanted me to fly down to her. Some people think hawks mate for just a season. Some people think they mate for life. And I don't really know which is true. One thing I know for sure. I wasn't ready to settle down with anyone, especially not a hawk. And yet, there was this feeling in me, like I belonged with her. I looked away. I would be glad when this mission was over and I no longer had to come here into her territory. She confused me. Suddenly, movement. I had let myself be distracted. Trucks, jeeps, they were rolling down the road. They were within a mile and moving fast. I looked frantically for my friends. There they were. I shrugged off the wind beneath my wings and dropped toward them. "Here they come," I cried. "Get into the cave." They ran for the cave, but it was harder to crawl inside in their human bodies. The wolves' thick pelts had protected them against the scratches and tears of the bushes. Thwack, 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 thwack. Helicopters skimming up above the trees. Too fast. My friends were still struggling to make into the shelter of the cave. One of the helicopters was on a straight line to them. "Oh man," I muttered. I still had a lot of my speed from the dive. I flapped hard and powering up to maximum speed. Straight at the helicopter. Straight at it. I could see the pilot, a human controller. Behind him sat a Hork-Bajir. Straight at them. The chopper was doing 90, and I was doing a little less. The distance between me and the chopper's windshield shortened very fast. They weren't going to pull up.